It's Tuesday, the 2nd of June, the year of our Lord 2020. Welcome to War Room Pandemic. Today we're going to go through both the revolt in the United States, particularly this revolt of this anarchist group Antifa. We're going to talk to you about who's been breaking into the stores, who's been doing the looting, not the peaceful protesters, but the anarchists and the looters, the bad guys, and they're bad guys. Let's call them what they are. They're bad guys. They've smeared or tried to smear the memory of Mr. Floyd, right? And this horrific situation out in Minneapolis. We got Buck Sexton, Ryan Gurdersky, the populist Buck Sexton, former CIA, NYPD intelligence officer, Mr. Buck Sexton. Liz Yore, former prosecutor from Chicago. Chicago is also on fire. We're going to try to get David Bahnsen. We try to beat ahead of the curve. Remember, it's pandemic. We still talk about the pandemic, the economic crisis, the financial crisis. Now we've got a social crisis, geopolitical crisis with China. We're going to get to that. We've got Frank Gaffney, Colonel John Mills. We're going to get Colonel Mills in today. But David Bahnsen, particularly guys on the desk, all you hedge fund guys that watch, remember, we said, I think, 3 or 4 weeks ago, in fact, Mr. Greg Manns, as you get everything. And Greg Manns is back at the table, even given his performance yesterday, he made it back. The Jack Posobiec thing was just, we were not trying Posobiec out because he can't work a computer either. Greg, if we get a chance, while we're in this first segment, see if you can get Bahnsen's. David Bahnsen came on here, I think 3 weeks ago, his last thing, and he's talked about the Japanification of the American economy. The Congressional Budget Office came out yesterday with an analysis and said that the GDP of the United States would not reach 2020 numbers until the end of the decade. This is the Japan. We said this 4 weeks ago. We had Bahnsen, always one of the smart, living out in Newport Beach, so you know he's had to be successful, right? Big financial advisor. He said what we've been doing, right, to save from this pandemic, infusing the capital through the Fed, this $6 trillion bazooka, it was going to lead to a Japanification, and that means the lost decades when you get negative interest rates or zero interest rates, low interest rates. He called it the Japanification of the American economy. You have to know this. We're trying to get David Bahnsen on from Newport Beach. Going to try to all cram it into the first hour. Remember, we got 2 hours here, action-packed. I want to go to yesterday, obviously, depending on how you look at it, either a Churchillian moment of going up to, was it Coventry? There was both the East End and Coventry during the Blitz. That I believe that I think the Queen at one time went to the East End and was so powerful. And Churchill also went, but he also went to Coventry, I think, after the brutal bombing of Coventry and that famous picture of him. Yesterday, it was either Trump's Churchillian moment, right? And these are two. Let's connect dots on moments. He went into the Rose Garden on Friday about the Chinese. Well, he talked for 9 minutes and dropped the mic and walked off. He talked about the Chinese. He laid out right there he's not going to be Neville Chamberlain, right? This is Austria. It's 1938. He knows history. He's very well read. I know people are going to mock that. And look, we're not here to carry water for Trump. We try to call it evenly, right? We're super partisans. That was a Churchill moment. He's not going to be Neville Chamberlain. And I don't particularly love the measured responses, but he laid out the whole menu and maybe then some. And then yesterday was the symbolic Churchillian moment, or although our betters, particularly our moral and spiritual betters, Maxie, are you an Anglican? Are you Episcopalian?
Catholic.
Catholic, that's right. I keep forgetting you're Catholic. Greg,
Convert.
From Episcopalian?
From a nothing, you know.
Okay.
hippie mom.
No. So here's the thing. Is that the Anglican Church, talk about an institution that has failed Western civilization, right? So the Anglican, so some of our betters in the Anglican and Episcopal Church don't think it was a Churchillian moment. They don't consider it Churchill at the Cathedral at Coventry. They took umbrage with this. So we've got a lot to go through. Let's play it in the order you want to play. I know Tucker gave I think a very impassioned tee up last night to this entire situation about the small shop owners, etc. Let's go through anyway.
I think Tucker's monologue, by the way, was over 30 minutes long on the show yesterday, which is extraordinary. You know, from a programming perspective.
When you don't have any advertising, I didn't say. NetSuite by Oracle. Just rubbing it in. No.
The best guest they could book is us. So better just keep Tucker up there. But it's extraordinary from a programming perspective, and it was extraordinary from a rhetorical perspective. He sort of covered and touched on all the different parts of this big, long, diatribe. People.
He's amazing.
It was extraordinary.
He's a colleague. He's a friend, and he's been a competitor. We competed. I mean, intensely when he ran Daily Caller and I was running Breitbart after Andrew passed away. He was a close friend of Andrew's, and he's coming to his moment. That was network type. That was Howard Beale type. I'm mad as hell, and I'm not going to take it anymore.
I mean, even Brian Stelter tweeted that he thought it was a really important moment in television, and I don't think he was being snarky about it. It was a tour de force on what you change the channel, you flick over to MSNBC or CNN. Tucker's in a whole different league to these guys, and I don't just mean they prep and he reads from the prompter. I mean his understanding of these issues.
Here's why it is, and here's why it's important. Tucker comes from a different place. I am a populist and I am a nationalist, and I've been that for many, many decades. Tucker was Mark I, Mod 0, traditional Republican. He believed it. Not only did he believe it, he sold it for 20 years on television, right? All of the stuff. The most powerful thing about Tucker Carlson is you're seeing a man on a journey of revelation, and he's angry at himself.
Absolutely.
He's angry at himself, and this is the power of it. He now is speaking truth to power as the power of a convert. And my grandmother, who really my dad's mother, was a convert from Southern Baptist, being a Southern Baptist, a fire-breathing Southern Baptist, to being a Catholic when she married my grandfather. And she was, uber Catholic. You were boom, 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 because it's the power of the converts. It's like Paul. You're seeing with Tucker every night his road to Damascus, right? He's Saul that has now become Paul, right? And he is a fire breather, and because he understands all, and not just the left, he understands the lies of the elites, both elites on the right and the elites on the left.
And
there's hope for you yet.
Tucker's journey is one that you're seeing lots of people take right now on the traditional left and on the traditional right, because they're both starting to question the system that has betrayed the deplorables on both sides of the equation.
This is why we have a a lot of our audience is Democrats. And a lot of those people, Donald Trump would not be president of the United States. And this upsets Democrats so much. If Democrats either didn't vote for him or didn't vote for Hillary Clinton. This is why you had that great thing Michael Moore always talks about. There's 80,000 ballots in Michigan that are down-ticket Democrat that left blank. They did not vote for Hillary Clinton. We're not prepared to vote for Trump. Okay, let's go into these things. We're jammed today with great guests. We got this Antifa thing, and to getting back of Antifa is important because Antifa is not going away.
Yeah, Joe Biden, I think, is actually speaking live right now as well. It looks like CNN is carrying it too. A very tight shot of Joe Biden there.
Is Joe Biden going to talk about his staff that's giving donations to the Antifa guys?
Yeah, but the bailout money that they've promised to not peaceful protesters, because remember, peaceful protesters are not actually getting arrested.
Peaceful protesters don't get arrested.
Right, and so they're actively giving money to rioters and looters. Let's start with the president yesterday at the very top from the Rose Garden. Incredibly powerful moment after, I'm not going to mince my words, a few days of the MAGA base over the weekend, raining hellfire down on the president and his team for what they perceived as a non-response response. There was a lot of people out there who I consider to be, original gangsters in the MAGA movement who were saying this isn't good enough. We need a national address.
You're talking to Mike Cernovich and that posse?
That posse, much wider as well. I spoke to a lot of people on the telephone over the last couple of days, and I'll tell you, the words that they've used in terms of the distancing themselves from what the White House was doing, I've never heard in such strong terms before. I didn't hear it during Charlottesville, didn't hear it on the social media stuff, didn't hear it on any of the foreign war, the launching of missiles, any of that. This weekend, I think seeing the pictures of people having to sweep glass from the front stores of their businesses, their mom and pop businesses, as just they were starting to reopen on the back of this pandemic, really set a lot of people on edge about what the White House response was. President Trump looked that criticism dead in the eye yesterday, and he took it and he used it, and he showed the nation, showed his base, but showed the nation that in a time of crisis, his instincts will always be the right ones. Let's go to the president.
My fellow Americans, my first and highest duty as president is to defend our great country and the American people. I swore an oath to uphold the laws of our nation, and that is exactly what I will do. All Americans were rightly sickened and revolted by the brutal death of George Floyd. My administration is fully committed that for George and his family, justice will be served. He will not have died in vain. But we cannot allow the righteous cries and peaceful protesters to be drowned out by an angry mob. The biggest victims of the rioting are peace-loving citizens in our poorest communities. And as their president, I will fight to keep them safe. I will.
Okay, here's the thing. And it's Trump's default position is when he does a power move. He's a power player. His best things, he would say, no games. Games are over. Power move. Every time in his administration he's taken a power move, good things happen. And you back it up. Because he's a guy who says, hey, if you're going to talk it, you got to walk it, right? Boom. Power move, back it up. Here's one thing when we get to Tucker's in a second. Is making an observation. I take it a third. I want to triage this a third. Because the speech was a third. But the third that was about Floyd was too short and not detailed in action, action. The entrepreneurs was too short and not action. The hammer was in bright, shining colors, and then we had the symbolic walk. Perfect. You got to go back to the third. Floyd, it's not just serving justice. When Donald Trump steps into a decision and owns that decision, things happen. Action. Trump time had to happen yesterday. This is Navarro. The power, boom, boom, boom. On the Floyd thing, he ought to immediately call for a presidential commission, and not some just a presidential commission headed by him with Barr, Pence, Pick, Clyburn should be the co-head. You get the best representatives in this country at the Attorney General's level, African American community, Hispanic community thing. It should be on policing and minorities, and it should get down to the bottom of the chokeholds, all of it. Don't let him die in vain. Then let's not just have Floyd's trial. Let's make this a national cause. Hey, I don't know if it's systemic racism or it's bad apples or it's bad training. I don't know. I'm not a law enforcement guy. I keep hearing that's the spectrum. That's the bid and the ask. Okay, fine. What are Americans best at? Arguing, right? Let's have a commission that's got all the voices on there, right? And get on it and have Trump and put targets. Hey, on July 4th, I want an interim report on August 1st. And by Labor Day, I want a set of actions that we're going to take at the federal level. That's and number two, we got 30 seconds. The entrepreneurs, flood the zone with cash. Every entrepreneur who's been burned out should know we're going to get you money, and in 30 days, you're going to be standing up with a store and inventory ready to roll. If we're going to get this country back, let's get it back. Okay, we're going to come back with Buck Sexton, NYPD intelligence, and CIA next on War and Pandemic.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Welcome back to War and Pandemic. We're live from the nation's capital. It's a nation's capital that's hurting, but not as much this morning as it was the last couple of days because Donald Trump finally stepped up and took dramatic, bold action. Okay, the hammer dropped. I just want to finish up what I was saying before. To flood the zone, there's 10 other things you can do in the Floyd situation. 10 other actions that should be done by the President of the United States. Action. get all over the Mr. Floyd situation, right? So he didn't. So let's make sure that Mr. Floyd didn't die in vain. There should be a pulling together to make sure that something like this never happens again, okay? Or to the degree possible. The other thing with the entrepreneurs, so it ought to be 90 days for Floyd on the presidential commission with an action plan that can be implemented in 30 days. It's 30-90. 30 on the entrepreneurs. Every entrepreneur that got burned out, call it whatever you want, a federal disaster zone, boom, whatever it is. We've already put $6 trillion through the Fed. There's some money left over there. Boom, hit every entrepreneur, the windows, the stores, and the inventory. Everything stood up, ready to go. If we want these cities to come back from this pandemic, we're going to have to put our shoulder to the wheel. The cities are vital to the United States. I think these mayors and these Democratic mayors have done a pathetic job. We're going to get into it. Buck Sexton's a NYPD intel officer. When we finally get our technical issues worked out, we're going to get Buck on. This thing with de Blasio is mind-numbing. And the mayor of D.C. Okay, we now have Buck Sexton from the Buck Sexton Show. You know, Buck was is also a former CIA officer and a NYPD intelligence officer. Knows what he's talking about. Buck, can you hear us? Yeah. Buck, do we have you? Okay, not yet. I'm sorry. So Raheem, let's go ahead and start playing some clips.
Well, here's the thing. I just want to tee this up with exactly what happened after that Churchillian moment in the Rose Garden yesterday, and explain to the people. And I know most of the country is watching this and watching it play out in real time. But for those who didn't see, and those who saw but maybe hadn't seen behind the scenes or hadn't heard behind the scenes, this was a decision that I understand was made at very, very short notice by the president to walk across Lafayette Square and walk to the St. John's Church. Now, if you pay attention to the show, if you're a regular viewer, you would have seen a couple of days ago, I went out myself to the park on the morning after, on the Sunday morning, and took pictures. And one of the pictures I took was of St. John's Church, on the side of the church, big graffiti, God is watching. And then down the alley of the church was where you saw this, what I described as this staging area that these rioters had used. And I really don't mean peaceful protesters, because while there have been peaceful protesters in amongst that lot, there have also been people who have been actively picking fights, damaging property, desecrating that church, and by the way, graffitiing on that wall right opposite the church, kill the cops, okay? So when Anderson Cooper has a meltdown, or Don Lemon has a meltdown, and the national news splashes on the front pages, Trump clears peaceful protesters with gas. Peaceful protesters typically don't destroy property, okay? You can't call them a peaceful protester destroying property. So the president with the team marches across Lafayette Park, and he stands outside of St. John's Church with Bible in hand, and he declares himself the law and order president. And this scene has caused a furore. And it's caused a furore not least with one of the bishops, the bishop of the Washington Diocese, the Episcopalian. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. And I thought her reaction to this, in real time, by the way, they had her on the news within 5 minutes of that taking place. I thought her reaction was precisely why so many Christian friends of mine are pursuing more traditional forms of worship and shunning the quote-unquote modernist interpretation of all this. Let's play what the bishop said on air yesterday.
Let me be clear. The president just used a Bible, the most sacred text of the Judeo-Christian tradition, and one of the churches of my diocese, without permission, as a backdrop for a message antithetical to the teachings of Jesus and everything that our churches stand for. And to do so, as you just said, he sanctioned the use of tear gas by police officers in riot gear to clear the churchyard. I am outraged. The president did not.
This is the church of the presidents. I'm not sure that the president of the United States needs clearance from a liberal bishop to go and stand outside.
Well, I think that's symbolically. I mean, it's an Episcopalian church. It's called the Church of the Presidents because the presidents have traditionally gone there
but that's
on
what
Inauguration
I mean.
Day.
But that's what I mean.
Look, he was standing just in front of a church. Anybody can go. Anybody can stand. Her umbrage is all for media umbrage.
Listen, I think what the president did last night is what I think he does extremely well, and what I give him a lot of props for over this whole process. He gives people courage. He acts like a leader. He stands out there and tells people, I'm in charge. That's what people want to hear. You know, this is infectious. We got to get this country opened up. We've got to stop the rioting, and we've got to honor the people who actually deserve to be honored and target those people who have taken the honor of George Floyd, his name, and something that united the entire country. And guess what? These Antifa, these anarchists have come in here and used this poignant moment when the whole country was united in pain to destroy homes, businesses, dreams. This is not what this is about, and I think the president should take the bully pulpit.
Just quickly, I'm going to throw this one out there, just special for Madeleine Peltz at Media Matters, since she needs something to write about. I am not going to take lessons in the Bible from a bishop who condemns other congregations for believing in traditional marriage, because that's what this bishop has done.
The what Jack Maxey said about courage, about going over there and reinforcing this thing of courage. Remember what Churchill and others have said. I think Churchill was the one that made it most famous. Courage is the most important of all the virtues, because it's upon courage that all the other virtues rest, right? That's why Trump's move was a power move. When their power moves, good things happen. Now, all the media is saying about an escalation, right? You got to be prepared to back it up, because they're going to try to escalate this. Let's talk about escalation. We're bringing now Buck Sexton to the Buck Sexton Show. On the first, it's a network over at Viacom. Buck is was ablaze with Glenn Beck and the team. What a lot of people don't realize, Buck was a CIA officer and also NYPD intelligence. Buck, do we have you, sir?
Yes, sir.
So, Buck, walk us through. We got a couple minutes here. We do want you to hold over to the next one, but I want you to walk us through. We saw Washington, D.C. with what President Trump did last night and kind of law and order finally being restored. Please walk our national and international audience through exactly what happened in New York City, because this looked to me as a total fiasco. What happened to the policing last night?
Well, you've got to assume, Steve and crew, hey, everybody, you've got to assume that what happened last night at some level had to do with an unwillingness from the top, and I mean the mayor's office. You have to remember that the mayor of New York City, the mayor of any city, is really like the commander-in-chief of the local police force. And de Blasio, look, he had to get his daughter had to get bailed out of jail recently for being arrested at one of the protests. He's a very left-wing guy, there's no surprise. And it seems like the NYPD's hand was being held back against this. I was listening in real time in my apartment. I live in Midtown Manhattan. As the police sirens were going everywhere, you could hear all the police helicopters hovering up in the air. It sounded like Apocalypse Now around here. And you could watch on social media in real time as people were saying, there's looting, here's a photo. And I don't mean one or two people breaking a storefront and running away. I mean a dozen people in some of the most crowded and well-known parts of this city breaking in glass and then sifting through what they want and don't want as onlookers are taking photo and video and posting it online. So in that environment, how could the NYPD not know? And I think the answer is they knew, but they were told largely to keep a hands-off approach unless things got particularly violent in some area. Otherwise, I can't come up with an explanation for how they couldn't get to Fifth Avenue, Broadway, places that everybody watching knows, as there were marauding mobs looting stores. It just doesn't make sense.
But here's what I don't understand, Buck. Here's what I understand. You were NYPD intel after your CIA career. Yeah. You work with Ray Kelly. Yeah. Ray Kelly came in after 9/11 when Rudy stepped down as mayor and Bloomberg came in as Bratton and Rudy left. Ray Kelly came in. Ray Kelly in the NYPD intelligence operation thwarted 14 terrorist attack on New York City. The finest intelligence unit. You guys taught the CIA and taught FBI how to do it. How does that police department, with that type of intelligence capability, allow, we only got a minute and a half, and I may have to come back. You're definitely coming back, but hang on. I got to get this in. Macy's last night, as iconic as Macy's is to this country, the Miracle on 34th Street, you want to see the decline of the United States of America, compare the movie The Miracle on 34th Street to what you saw at Macy's flagship store last night, right? The looting going on there. This is not peaceful demonstrations. This is making a mockery of the death of Mr. Floyd, right? And this is it's organized. So how does the NYPD intel not see this coming?
Oh no, they see it coming. I mean, this is what I'm getting at. They have a whole cyber unit that I used to work with on the counterterrorism side, but that cyber unit also goes in and tracks anarchists. They'll even put people. They'll have sock puppet accounts. They'll get online. They'll infiltrate chat rooms. All the things that you would expect. They'll do that for specifically groups like Antifa, and they have been for years. So they knew what was coming, and a lot of these guys, meaning the bad guys in this instance, will post some of what their plans are. So then it just gets to, is it, we've seen this in a few cities where either chiefs of police or mayors have been willing to say it out loud. It's, I won't use force to protect property. And that's essentially what we've come down to in some of these cities. That's what it looked like last night in New York. As long as they're just breaking glass fronts and stealing $1,000 handbags, we're not going to tackle these guys to the ground and put the flex cuffs on them. That's from the mayor.
Buck, we're going to take a second and bring you right back. Buck Sexton is going to join us. Be back in a minute. War Room Pandemic.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Fortune favors boldness. You saw that by President Trump yesterday in the Rose Garden and then over in front of St. John's, the historic church across Lafayette Square. Where fortune favors boldness for entrepreneurs. We're going to talk more about that here the rest of this segment. But remember, if you're an entrepreneur, you need NetSuite by Oracle. It's in 20,000 businesses. Whether your revenue is $1 million or $100 million or anything in between, and particularly if you're thinking of starting a business, go to netsuite.com/Bannon. Buy Oracle, the #1 cloud computing system in the world, and go right now the 7 action steps you need to be taking in these turbulent times. More about this before the top of the hour. We're going to turn back to Buck Sexton. Buck, okay, given your experience, sir, and we know the president thinks the world of you and watches your show and your commentary and your advice, but if you were in the room today with Mayor de Blasio and Governor Cuomo, what would you tell them has to happen tonight in order to avoid what we saw last night on global television in the greatest city in the world, New York City?
You've got to make sure, first and foremost, that the men and women of the NYPD feel like the hierarchy has their back, because here's what people are forgetting right now, and I think the media is misleading folks on intentionally. Law enforcement includes the use of force. If you're going to stop, they have to wrestle people to the ground. You're going to have to chase them down. You don't just get to say stop when there's an angry mob rampaging through a neighborhood. And if they get to just assume they're going to get away with it, they're not going to stop. In terms of the tactics, which I think is more what you're going to, they need to make sure that they get a handle. I mean, the cyber side is really important because they have a pretty good infiltration of the comms. I mean, they're seeing more and more of this. NYPD Commissioner for Intelligence and Counterterrorism Miller has publicly stated that they've seen that there are distribution mechanisms in place. They're using online comms to do this for incendiary devices. They're setting up medics. They're setting up rally points. They know exactly where they're going. When you see the stores they've gone after, it's Hermes, it's Coach, it's Ferragamo, Rolex, these global brands. They've mapped all this out beforehand. They know what they're going for. So using that intel that we have to set up beforehand, and the moment they start to break the law, to circle in on them and just do old-fashioned police work, which means you chase them down, you bring them to the ground, you put the flex cuffs on, and you process them. But they're going to video this, and there are going to be people who say, oh, why just for property would we do this? Well, because it's anarchy. So there's really no secret sauce here other than political will and allowing the NYPD's resources to be deployed to enforce the law instead of to be bystanders until there's some horrific violent event, let's say, that happens. Then they'll step in.
Buck, it's Raheem. I wanted to get your thoughts. Not just, I mean, that stuff I think is priceless advice. But I also wanted to get your thoughts on what the president's actions were yesterday, the speech in the Rose Garden, the walk to St. John's, and what you would tell the president. I know you were in the Oval Office with him recently. What you would tell him today if you were in there again.
Well, for one thing, it shows that the president is trying to get the message out to these, particularly in governors and mayors. You know, the mayors and the governors, depending on which place you're talking about, are the ones that are really dropping the ball in all this, to say that either you do the job or I'm going to have to come in and do it for you. And when you're talking about the invocation of the Insurrection Act of 1807, which is where we are, it hasn't been invoked yet, but it could be. That's a reminder to everybody of the seriousness of this, but also the seriousness with which the White House takes this issue, whereas we keep getting told by, I mean, our media's behavior on this, I could talk to all of you guys about this for hours. It's mind-bogglingly dishonest and stupid and horrific, but that's not a surprise. But for local governments, whether we're talking about D.C. or New York or Chicago or just name your major U.S. city, they have done, a lot of them, New York in particular, a terrible job on COVID-19. And now they have another opportunity to try to show us what leadership and efficient government looks like, and they're falling down on the job. So the president's saying, if you can't do it, I'll step in. He needed to say it. I wish he even said it a day or two sooner, and now we'll see what the reaction is from the people that are supposed to be calling shots on the ground.
Buck, what's your Twitter handle? Can we get how do people get more access to you in the show?
Buck Sexton. They can download the Buck Sexton Show on Spotify. And also right now I have a thread up on Twitter that's just photos of the devastation, the broken windows, the destruction. I was out there this morning, first thing, seeing this mayhem and looting, because I didn't see it live on CNN last night, but I could hear it. And CNN headquarters is about a 10-minute walk from my house.
Buck Sexton, thank you very much, Buck. One of the smartest guys around. Really appreciate coming on the show.
Thanks so much, guys.
Just as a corollary to what he was talking about real quick.
By the way, this is why it's dangerous. They didn't show that last night
Right.
on these networks. They also did not show the president's speech. MSNBC and CNN and the leadership, the management, not the on-air talent, should be ashamed of itself. When Trump goes down to, I don't care if you hate him. When he goes down, the president of the United States goes down to Cape Canaveral and gives an address on a historic day like that, and you don't cover his address because you can't stand the sight of him, you don't get to make that call. To be a news organization, you have an obligation to show that speech, or what you talked about, Mr. Floyd, and then most of it was talking about the historic launch of the first commercial thing. You don't get. This is why you've lost so much credibility. This is why your credibility's worse than the guys across the street in Congress. You don't get to make that call. Okay? And this is on Zucker, right? And on Phil Griffin and the guys that run that. That is a disgrace. When the president's doing it, and then last night to try to not show it. You need to show it. One of the reasons we need to show it, you have to embrace the fact it's your fault, part of it, as an institution. This is why America's in decline. And let me rub salt in an open wound, media. This is why Donald J. Trump is the 45th president of the United States. It was a rejection of you. It was a rejection of you. You had the back of Hillary Clinton. You had the back of the global elites, and they rejected you. You were rejected. Okay? That's why he's president. America, working class America and middle class America, does not want this country in decline. They want to make America great again. And the Bernie people, for those of you out there that have eyes to see and ears to listen, using a biblical phrase that our honored Episcopal bishop did not use, which I think she needs. This is about decline. And it's not just the Antifa anarchists in the street and the rioters in the street. The decline, the fish rots from the head down, and that's the media, right? Your cowardice in not showing it. How does Anderson Cooper have a meltdown about Trump in the Rose Garden, yet won't show in his show the reality of what happened in New York City last night? Buck Sexton sitting there saying helicopters all over. They got police all over. I had people in New York calling me and texting me during the night saying it was like World War III, right? Gunfire all around, sirens all around, and you're not seeing anything. The media's not giving it to you in real time.
It's almost like Chris Cuomo might be compromised out of doing the news properly.
It's ridiculous. You mean because his brother's standing by? His brother, they all want to come in. And look, we had the WABC show for a couple of weeks during the height of it, the worst days. We were trying to be supportive of the mayor and the governor, trying to be even-handed in the time. You go back and listen to it, trying to be supportive of decisions. They were making tough decisions in the middle of it. But you can't come in and try to shut down the city, and people can't get community, can't get to church, and then you let this go on.
Well, let's not forget also this frustration that America has right now. We saw it with the fentanyl problem. We saw it with unemployment in the Midwest. We've watched all these jobs be exported overseas. Let's not forget the mainstream media was in charge of that narrative over the last 20 years. And guess what? We're all surprised now to find out that we got sold out.
Yeah, where was your coverage on China? Where was your coverage on the factories? Where was your coverage on the opioids? Is the initial preliminary medical report show that Mr. Floyd might have had fentanyl?
They're saying that Mr. Floyd might have had fentanyl, which is, I'm not accusing him of being a bad guy, but this is a Chinese poison.
This
It's coming into this country.
is the second opium war. Why do people like Mr. Floyd this? It's because of the despair of not having a great job. That's why it's law and order predicated upon something. This is why I said to Maria Bartiromo the other day. The fentanyl all comes in through the Mexican cartels from China, right? It's the despair of people like Mr. Floyd and others that should have terrific jobs and careers. That's the angst. That's the despair. You're covering that. The anger and the pain you keep talking about. MSNBC and CNN. Let's go see it. Because we stripped all the jobs out of the country and sent it. And it's the Chinese people. You have globalists to have the slave labor in China, of which you never mention at all. What's happened to the Chinese people? Why do the Chinese people have to come on this show every Saturday for 2 hours and to hear their voice of anguish? You want to hear pain and you want to hear anguish. Listen to their voices. And where have you been in CNN with Christine Amador? All you do is support the party of Davos. Jeff Zucker is a charter member in the party of Davos. You're going to run for mayor? Sir, is this the leak? Is this the thing I saw on Drudge? You thinking of running for mayor? Please spare me. I will make it my personal. I spent 10 years on the Hillary Clinton thing, and it didn't work out too well for her. Ask her. Ask her if you want Steve Bannon in your life. Ask Hillary how that work turned out for her. 10 years, okay? Go read Josh Green's book, 10 years on that project. Zucker, I'll make you a personal project. I dare you to run for mayor in New York. I will have so much fun on doing this, sir, because we will field strip you of everything you've allowed to happen, Mr. Jeff Zucker. And Trump triggers him. Give me a break. Give me a break. Donald Trump's done more for working class people of every color, every race, every ethnicity, every religious persuasion, every gender, every sexual preference than he's done more in a week for working class people and bringing jobs back here to this country and getting wages up, working class wages on the rise, than Jeff Zucker's done in his entire career. In fact, Zucker, you guys have been at the absolute cutting edge of the party of Davos. You're the propaganda department. And you got Cuomo and you got Anderson Cooper having these big meltdowns. Spare me. Just please spare me. It's so phony and so put upon. It's so phony. Say what you are. You're the mouthpiece for the globalists that have destroyed. Mr. Floyd's got the angst because there's no great jobs out there anymore. That we're not, and you will not cover what America could become, the leader in the fourth industrial revolution, right? With high-paying jobs, great jobs that are a career that you can build a family upon, that you don't have to worry about your next paycheck. You don't have to worry about going on unemployment. You don't have to worry about using social services because you're a net contributor to society. Why? Because we're at the cutting edge of where America used to be as a manufacturing superpower. Okay? We never see that on on CNN, do you? Where are those specials? Unbelievable. Yeah, the whole thing is so corrupt, and people understand it. They understand it's a scam. They understand it's a scam. These are not, and by the way, international stores, I'm not walking in Hermes, as you can tell, and buying stuff. I may have bought an Hermes scarf every now and again. And Colonel Dr. Ambassador Birx has motivated me to buy more of them. Where's my Colonel Dr. Ambassador Birx? President Trump, you got to let the committee come back on. I got enough of Fauci. I got to see Colonel Ambassador. Let's give her a field promotion. Brigadier General Birx. Okay, we got Liz Yore, we got Dave Bahnsen, we got a whole host of people. We're going to be back in a moment. Get back on track.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
The world's #1 cloud software system is from Oracle. It's NetSuite by Oracle. It's made for entrepreneurs, whether your business is $1 million or $100 million or anywhere in between. You need NetSuite by Oracle. They're the sponsor of War Room Pandemic. We're very honored, and the reason they're sponsored is because we do the pandemic, we do the economic crisis, we do the financial crisis, the geopolitical crisis, and they know entrepreneurs, even if you're not one now, you're going to become one. And you need every tool at your disposal. Go to netsuite.com/Bannon and get 7 actions you need to be thinking about today in today's turbulent times. Remember, this is your watchword. Fortune favors boldness. Okay, let's turn now to David. We're going to get back to the Antifa part of it and China. We got all that in the next hour. We're going to have Liz Yore, prosecutor, on. We're going to have Ryan Girdusky, the populist out of New York City. We've got Frank Gaffney, and we've got Colonel John Mills. Action-packed next hour. This hour had to get in Dave Bahnsen. Here's the reason. We try to keep you, we know a lot of the desk watch the show every day, listen to it at night. We try to keep you ahead of the curve, ahead of what's happening. 4 weeks ago, we had Dave Bahnsen on here talking about the Japanification of the American economy. Bahnsen's the first one to call it, to say, hey, look, you had a lost decade. You've got a tough time ahead. And I'm not agreeing with the Congressional Budget Office report. It's very controversial about how politicized they are. But they had a study out yesterday. I think it's essentially saying that the GDP of our country, we're not to 2020 levels, or the projection for 2020 for 10 years, which is essentially the Japanification of your country. It's a lost decade. We're honored now to bring back Dave Bahnsen as the first one to call this. So, Dave, is the Congressional Budget Office study right? And is this what you were talking about when you walked through the Japanification of our economy?
One of the biggest frustrations for an economically minded guy like me is when someone else gets a similar conclusion for totally wrong reasons and with totally different premises. So it's not exactly the same. And if anything, it encourages me, Steve, because their track record is so awful that if they're willing to predict that, it makes me think perhaps things will end up being better. But by Japanification, what I mean is that the excessive government spending and the incredible financial repression from the Fed will compress growth for a very long time in a deflationary spiral. And unfortunately, the people who hurt the most from that are the middle class or small businesses. People with big assets do better because it bids up the value of the assets. Nothing has exacerbated that divide, the social, cultural, economic divide in our country more than that monetary policy.
By the way, monetary policy that was driven by Barack Obama and Geithner and his Secretary of Treasury and his Federal Reserve chief at the time. I want to go back. When you say financial suppression, what has the Fed done today, or what's the Fed doing now that you'd say is leading to financial, I think it was suppression?
Repression. Financial repression.
Okay.
And they would be kind of synonymous in this case, but what they're doing is forcing interest rates down all along the yield curve, just like they've done in Japan, buying bonds hand over fist, billions, hundreds of billions of dollars, with money that doesn't exist, so as to create a lot of liquidity in the financial system. And so what that does is it allows stocks and real estate and other financial assets to get bid higher, but then it compresses growth and growth expectations. Japan did it because they had to monetize the debt of their country, we've been doing it to kind of bail out various crises, our financial crisis and now the COVID one. But I think that Japanification term works for developed economies that get into a place of excessive debt, and it's a way to try to pass on the cost of it, to try to export your deflation. Japan has done it rather effectively, Steve. The U.S. has sort of paid the price of some of Japan's deflation. They've exported it as much as they can. But my concern is for long-term U.S. economic growth, that right now we don't have those growth industries that it's going to take to create a generation like we had post-World War II.
This is what I said on Maria the other day. We got a choice. Saturday showed us a choice. We're either going to be the leader of the fourth industrial revolution as shown by SpaceX, or just devolve into this complete class and race warfare. You're backing that up, aren't you, by saying that financial policies are going to lead us to that? Is that what you're I don't want to put words in your mouth, but is that what you're saying?
I think the financial policy is left unchecked. It remains to be seen post-COVID and, very frankly, post-election. Okay, look, I don't really care for it when POTUS talks about wanting negative interest rates. I know why he's saying it, but it will make the problem much worse, not better. You can't give a negative interest rate to the savers of our country. I think ultimately we don't want to follow Japan's mode, but the question is, what do you do when there's no political will to control the appetite of government, control spending? Everyone sort of believes, and you said it earlier, Steve, it was out of the early Obama years, post-crisis. Bernanke, Yellen, they had this, certainly Geithner, they had this worldview that, yes, it helped more, but ultimately it's better for everybody because it kind of keeps the financial system turning. I'm not even saying they're wrong about that. It's just that it isn't sustainable. It has to be worked out when we're not in a crisis.
This is the phoniness of MSNBC and CNN. Okay, they said Obama's the most progressive president in history. That's where the concentration of wealth started. The greatest transfer of wealth in mankind's history, not just the nation's history, mankind's history, occurred in those years in the bailouts of the financial crisis. The bailouts of the financial crisis caused the concentration of wealth. This is why Bernie Sanders, in the pillow fight, sir, that you fought with Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden, two globalists, it's the reason you're on the sidelines, sir. It's a knife fight, not a pillow fight. You never brought it up. You never forced CNN to bring it up. You never forced MSC to bring it up. So you got these phony discussions about progressive policies when you've destroyed the underlying economics. That's where these young kids are serfs. They're no different than Russian serfs. They don't own anything, and they're not going to own anything. They can't save you. If you have a savings account, you're a sucker because you get zero on it. There's no way to get any capital formation if you're in person. And trust me, if they don't own into the system, they're going to try to tear down the system. This is what you've got on the streets of America. Dave Bahnsen, you're a genius. You're brilliant. Thank you for joining us early in the morning from Newport Beach, California, sir.
Thank you for having me, Steve.
I got all worked up in this first hour. Okay, we got Liz Yore, we got Ryan Godursky, we've got Frank Gaffney, we got John Mills. That's an hour for anything. Those are all fire breathers, along with the posse here in the War Room. Short commercial break. We're going to return in about 90 seconds.